Today, we are diving into a really powerful and, let's be honest, provocative critique of the American system. It's an argument that starts by questioning the very stories the nation tells about itself. So, let's unpack it and see what it's all built on.
Okay, this is our starting point. It's a rewrite of the Pledge of Allegiance, and it is designed to be jarring, right? It's meant to challenge some really deeply held beliefs. But it's not just a parody. It's really the core argument, the thesis statement for a very deep critique that we're going to explore.
So, you have to ask, what brings someone to such a radical point of view? In this explainer, we're going to trace the exact arguments and the evidence that are presented in the source material to really get to the bottom of the logic behind this critique. To get started, let's circle back to that reimagined pledge, because it's designed to do one thing really, really clearly: set up a fundamental clash between two completely opposite American stories. See, on one side, you've got that story we all know, the American dream, right? A land of opportunity for everyone. But on the other side, you have this critique, which argues the whole system is a scam, designed for servitude. And the dialogue we're looking at, well, it lives right in the middle of that tension. So, where's the proof? Where does this critique find its evidence? Well, the dialogue first turns to the modern economy. It argues that if you really want to see the system in action, all you have to do is look at the rules of the game and who really benefits from them. And the main economic argument here really boils down to hypocrisy. It's this idea that the principles we're all taught, risk, reward, responsibility, the ones that apply to the average person or a small business owner, well, they just seem to vanish when it comes to the powerful. Let's take the 2008 financial crisis as an example. The dialogue points out that major banks, they got these massive government bailouts, and the logic was that they were too big to fail. But at the same exact time, countless small businesses and homeowners were told to accept market discipline. They were just allowed to fail. The critique frames this as two totally different sets of rules for two different classes. And this quote from the dialogue just perfectly captures the essence of that critique. It suggests a system where all the rewards of success are kept private, but the massive, catastrophic risks, those get passed on to the public. But, and this is the key, only for a select few at the very top. And this argument goes way beyond just moments of crisis. The dialogue highlights how companies that we celebrate as these icons of private sector innovation, think Amazon, Tesla, SpaceX, have actually been heavily supported by our tax dollars through subsidies, loans, and huge government contracts. It really challenges that popular story of the self-made entrepreneur. But the critique goes even deeper than modern economics. It argues that these dynamics, they aren't some recent problem. They're actually part of the system's original blueprint. And to understand that, we have to look at the very foundations of power in America. The argument being made is that to really understand the inequalities of today, we have to go all the way back to the U.S. Constitution itself and ask a really simple question: who exactly was it written for? The dialogue points directly to the makeup of the Constitutional Convention. I mean, look at it. It was completely dominated by this tiny, elite group of wealthy, white, male landowners. So from that perspective, the critique argues that, of course, the document they created would naturally serve to protect their own interests. And the evidence cited for this is right there in the original text of the Constitution. You've got things like the Electoral College, which was designed to water down direct popular vote. You had property requirements that limited voting only to the wealthy. And, most explicitly, clauses like the Three-Fifths Compromise and the Fugitive Slave Clause, which literally wrote slavery into the nation's legal DNA. The argument is that these weren't bugs. They were intentional features designed to keep a specific power structure in place. So here's the crucial point. When the founders talked about freedom, the critique argues that they were talking about a very, very specific and limited version of it, one that really only applied to people who looked and lived just like them. So who was left out of this special founders edition of freedom? Well, pretty much everyone else, the vast majority of the population. Women, enslaved people, Native Americans, and even white men who didn't own property. According to this critique, all of these groups were excluded from that vision of liberty. They were positioned to serve the interests of the class that was actually enfranchised. So, after looking at both modern economic hypocrisy and the historical foundations of power, the dialogue brings it all together for its final conclusion: a complete re-examination of the American system as a whole.
At the end of the day, the ultimate argument is that the story of America as a universal land of opportunity is a mask for a system that was actually designed for wealth extraction. A system where the opportunity was always mainly for a dominant group to benefit from the labor and resources of everybody else.
And that brings us right back to where we started. After walking through all the historical and economic arguments from the dialogue, the words of this satirical pledge, well, they take on a much more specific meaning, reflecting each and every point of the critique we've just covered. Ultimately, this entire critical dialogue leaves us with one fundamental question. The story a nation tells about itself is incredibly powerful, but this analysis challenges all of us to ask, which version of that story becomes the official one, and whose experiences does it leave out?